There are a few more videos I want to put out on the Mazda Protege as I still daily the car for now. Hopefully this will help those who still drive one of these. This is an issue I had to deal with about 8 years ago when I first bought the car, back in the year 2016. This time I just happened to catch it on camera to share with you all. You've seen me address some of the car's other ASU issues, so you can add this one to your archives. So one day I felt the AC wasn't as cold as usual, so I decided to get out, open the hood, and take a look. I did find what I was expecting, which was a fan that wasn't working, but that was only a contributing reason as to why the AC wasn't cold. The fix for that turned out to be two other things. One fix was very simple and inexpensive, and the other involved a little bit more work. More on that later. As mentioned, I looked into the engine bay expecting to find a fan not working, which is what I found, but out of the corner of my eye I saw something glistening and bubbling, and I looked down and this is what I saw. Green dyed refrigerant oil bubbling from the high side service valve. Looking at the valve, the missing caps, the metal line, and the stem, you can see this had been going on for a while and that I had simply overlooked it on multiple accounts. The refrigerant simply was escaping the high side service valve into the engine bay. Low refrigerant levels will produce a poor cooling AC system, and the Protege has some of the coldest AC ever put into a small compact car. It will literally run you out when working properly. The best part about this is that part of the repair is an easy fix. You will need to access a refrigerant recovery machine, or if all your refrigerant is leaked out, all you will need to do is change the valves and have the system charged at a local repair shop. That is, if that's all it needs. GPD Global Parts Distributors makes a service valve kit that fits the Protege. It comes with several Schrader port valves and 2 securing caps for the service ports. You can purchase this from Amazon or eBay. I purchased mine from eBay for like $12.99 plus shipping. Once the system is empty, you will need a Schrader valve tool such as this one from Lyle. This is used to unscrew the Schrader valves. If you look closely, the tool has a square cutout at the tip to grip the valves for removal. Simply insert the tool and make sure the tool grips both sides of the valve and turn it counterclockwise to remove the valve. Installation is the reverse of removal. Looking closely at the old valves, you can see the rubber seals at the top were flat on the sides, likely contributing to the leaks. There are some small red conical seals down inside the valves, but these are quite difficult to see. At this service interval, both valves were replaced. It really isn't necessary to show the low side port, as it is done exactly the same way. Here is an image of the new valves before they were put in. Once the valves have been replaced, you will now need to vacuum down the system so the refrigerant can be recharged. That is, unless you find another leak like I did. The second leak wound up being the evaporator. If you've watched my previous videos, you've seen me remove, clean, and install one of these. I'll be removing it again, only this time I'll be replacing the evaporator as I found some evidence that it was leaking. As far as the valves are concerned, I knew that the valves had been leaking for quite some time. This is kind of what happens when you're fixing everyone else's cars and barely have time to fix your own. For someone who may not fix cars on a daily basis, you can use an ultraviolet light if you think your AC is leaking. It certainly helped me confirm my suspicions to this issue. Another problem I've encountered with this car is the cooling fans. They would simply stop working. This is what I mentioned before. I gotta tell you, I've replaced the cooling fans on this car with cheap used ones from salvage yards and cheap aftermarket parts from Rock Auto. For a while I thought the fan failures I was experiencing was due to the parts being used or just cheap, but it was actually neither. I kept having the same fan failures over and over with blown fuses. And that is until I figured out that one of the voltage supply wires to the main cooling fan was short-circuiting to ground because it was rubbing against the sharp edge of the radiator. Well, duh. The other issue I found was that the auxiliary fan kept failing because of a faulty relay. Yep, a relay. I found this out by tinkering about with my digital voltmeter, and I did a voltage drop test across the supply and ground terminals for the relay. The voltage was dropping a staggering 5.6 volts, and the relay was red hot. So if you come across these issues, be sure to check the wiring and relays, as it could very well be that simple. The fourth issue I'd like to mention is sort of a bonus. It has nothing to do with the fans or AC system. I don't know how many Protege owners have dealt with this one, but you know, I've had this happen twice and I think I've found the cause. No solutions, unfortunately, except to replace a few components, but at least it's something worth looking out for. We'll get back to that later. For now, let's pull the evaporator and see what we got. Like before, removal of the unit is pretty simple. So simple, even a caveman can do it. No pun. First, you'll need to go into the engine bay and release the fasteners for the two AC lines. You will need to purchase a set of Ford fuel line disconnect tools to get the AC lines loose. I purchased this one from Advanced Auto for like $13. The high pressure line is simple. Take two wrenches, 17 and 19 millimeter, and release the nut fasteners. In the previous videos, I really didn't show how the low pressure line comes apart so well, so be sure to check out these minor details in this video. Simply place the tool around the large line with the shelf area of the tool facing the front of the car. The reason for this is because the line is held in place by a spring lock mechanism. Inserting the tool makes the spring stretch to a larger diameter. When you feel the tool stretch the spring, twist the line back and forth and pull simultaneously. This will release the line. Next, move inside the car and remove the glove box. I already had mine out, as you can see. You will then need to remove the glove box frame by unscrewing these frame mount screws. It's annoying because there's quite a few screws to remove to get this frame out of the car, but at the same time there's only two 10mm nuts to get the evaporator box in your hands. The anxiety of having to release about 10 screws just to get the two nuts holding everything together makes it seem worse. Once the frame is out, release the two nuts holding the evaporator box, release the plug for the blower resistor, and then release the plug for the evaporator temperature sensor and pull straight back. And that's pretty much it. With the evaporator box out, I'm going to show you with a UV light where the leaks are. See those bright color spots? Those are small holes in the evaporator core. The bright spots are where the UV dye in the refrigerant oil has come out of the holes, and this is another area where refrigerant leaks out. It must be replaced. To get to the core, you got to take the case loose, and as I mentioned before, it absolutely sucks that the Protege isn't equipped with a cabin filter. Just look at this dirty, nasty, sticky mess. The evaporator core is full of dirt, mold, and leaves. It's a good thing I don't have to clean the core this time because it's getting replaced. Some disassembly of the old unit is required because you will have to reuse one of the smaller high pressure pipes attached to the unit. In order to do this, I had to take off the insulating putty around the expansion valve. The Protege uses the older style expansion valve with the capillary tubes. This type of expansion valve was very popular with R12 AC systems. I went ahead and took off the other pipes to show that when you replace these components, be sure to put fresh O-ring seals where the pipes join together. I wouldn't want you to take this apart and assume that there are no seals in these other pipes, put it all back together, and then get a massive refrigerant leak inside the vehicle. R34A refrigerant has an odor that really stinks, and it's hard to get out of fabrics like carpet and seats, so don't F this up. When assembling the new parts, you have to bend these small lines for the capillary tube to fit where necessary. This may require a bit of bending and moving the line. Don't worry, As long as you handle it with care, it won't kink or break. Once you get the lines where you need them, you will need to re-insulate the capillary tube as well as the expansion valve. Before, it was covered with a foam blanket that had adhesives to hold it all together. If you try to remove it, the foam will just tear. I didn't have anything like that I could use as a replaceable item, so I used what is widely known in auto dealerships as Dum Dum. It is very sticky, yet it can be used as a sealer or for insulation purposes. In this case, it was used to insulate the capillary tube as well as the expansion valve. Next, I had to clean the evaporator box. It was full of mold and dirt particles from the fan sucking in all kinds of debris. I'm not using anything fancy here, just a green pan, some soapy water solution, and some running water, and a small brush to clean the inside of the case halves. You can see lots of trash in the water as soon as it gets rinsed. I guess I could have used a larger brush, but this will do, as a small brush can remove more mold and dirt and grime in smaller areas than a larger brush can. Once everything is assembled, you would then need to add insulating foam strips around the surrounding edge of the evaporator core as shown here. This will aid in keeping the core from rattling around inside the box and developing holes too soon, as it changes shape slightly when under pressure from the compressor. Once the evap box is fully assembled, all that's left to install is the evap temp sensor. Somewhere in the center will do just fine. At this point, the evap box is ready to reinstall under the dashboard. This task is fairly easy. You just need to align the tubes with the holes in the firewall and push it forward, aligning the mounting points with the two studs. Add the two 10mm nuts and it's back in the car. You would then reconnect the temp sensor and the blower resistor, reinstall the glove box frame and the glove box, and that's it. Back in the engine bay, you would need to install 3 fresh sealing O-rings for the low and high pressure tubes. The low pressure side uses 2 medium-sized O-rings, and the small high pressure line uses 1 small O-ring. Before attaching the pipes, be sure to lube the O-rings with a small amount of refrigerant oil, as when tightening and fitting these, the O-rings can become pinched or rolled if they are dry. When installing the larger low pressure line, here is a tip. Rotate the line back and forth just like before, only this time inserting the tool isn't necessary. Continue to do this while pushing the 2 lines together until you hear the spring lock make an audible click noise. Use the 17 and 19mm wrenches to secure the high pressure line, and this completes the evap install. Now all you have to do is charge the AC system. Today I will be charging the system with just under 1.4 pounds of 134A refrigerant. With a new evaporator, things should get very cold now. Now on the 4th bonus issue, like I said before, I don't know how many Protege owners have had to deal with this, but this has happened to me twice, and I think it's worth mentioning. It's not AC related, but it deals with the alternator bracket that sits on the back of the engine. Let's take a look at this. The back of the engine is where the alternator is mounted. The alternator is mounted on an aluminum bracket that is held by 3 bolts. If you look inside one of the casting legs of the alternator, you will see a sliding bushing that has a section cut out of it. This bushing is supposed to slide to one side when tightening the alternator, and this will keep the device stable and safe from excessive vibrations. Well, on the alternators I've had, the bushing seems to always get stuck rather than slide to one side to keep the alternator steady and tight. When this occurs, the bolt will usually pull the threads out of the other side of the alternator when you are making an attempt to tighten it. Now, since there's a tensioning bolt at the top of the alternator, the lower mounting bolt will usually stay inside the 2 pieces, but it will back itself halfway out. When this occurs, it makes the hole for the alternator bracket elongated due to the tension of the belt. The result is damaged and pulled threads on the alternator. The solution so far has just been replace the alternator, the bolt, and the bracket if you cannot repair the threads. You could press the bushing out to remove it from the alternator and maybe polish it and put it back in, but you risk breaking the casting on the alternator leg. This is the second time I've had to deal with this issue. If you've ever had this happen on your Protege, leave your thoughts and comments below. After repairing the AC, here is the final temperature readout. As you can see, I'm sitting still here just before leaving the dealer's rear driveway. With the compressor at idle, the AC is putting out a very nice 41 to 42 degrees Fahrenheit at the center vents. I can already feel the bite. Imagine what's going to happen when the car starts rolling. Now that's what I call ice cold AC. Thanks for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.